All right, thank you all so much for being here this morning. It's a real treat to hear from Uni and their SafeUT team, and they'll give you the overview and some data and walk you through the whole process today, right? 2 hours and done.
Yeah.
Yes. My name is Christy Walker. I'm here as the school safety specialist, and so if you have any questions, concerns, please contact me, let me know. I'll be sitting in the back while these guys run the show. So over to you.
Hi everyone. Thanks for coming early. Hope you all had coffee or soda or whatever gets you going in the morning. My name is Will Levitt. I'm a project facilitator at SafeUT. I represent Murray, Salt Lake District, and everything south of Point of the Mountain.
I'm Michelle Fedorkovsky. I'm also a project facilitator, and I represent Salt Lake Valley and everything north, as well as Tooele and Jordan. So.
And I'm Barry Rose, and I manage Uni's Crisis Services. And the SafeUT program is one of our programs, and so I oversee the clinical management. You couldn't hear me?
No.
I'm Barry Rose. I'm the clinical manager for the University of Utah Neuropsychiatric Institute's crisis programs, with SafeUT being one of those programs.
My name's Christian Jones, and I'm one of the software developers for the.
We've got some more IT folks in the back. First, let me say this is really going to put my fear of public speaking to the test, so bear with me today. First off, who here is from public schools? What about private? Charter? Any higher ed? Great. So we got a wide mix of people here, which thank you so much for being here. Like Christy said, we're going to give a brief background on SafeUT. Is there any schools here that haven't enrolled or are currently in the process of enrolling? Awesome. We're going to give you guys some updated data, IT updates, let you guys know kind of what's coming down the pipe. Dashboard, we're going to speak to that. And then we're going to have Brian McGill, who's the principal of Alta, speak to best practices of enrollment. Alta was actually the first school to enroll with SafeUT when we were really launching this, and so his input is really invaluable, so thank you very much. Yeah, we've got some posters over there if you need them, SafeUT cards, pens, as well as Michelle and I's business cards. Feel free, grab a whole bunch. We have tons of them. If you guys have any questions, fire away. I've always wanted to say this to a room full of educators, but please raise your hands if you have any questions. So, all right, let's get going. So, SafeUT, and I'm sorry if a lot of you have already seen these slides, just bear with us. The Utah legislature created the statewide school safety and crisis line in 2015 with State Bill 0175. The program was expanded in 2018 to include grants for all institutions of higher education qualify for the program. If you don't know already, it's a crisis chat line and school safety tip line developed for all students in Utah, including higher ed students. And then this past year, we also expanded that to parents and educators. Currently, all 41 Utah K-12 school districts have adopted the use of the SafeUT app, as well as all 16 state-sponsored institutions of higher ed and technical colleges. So we just finished about 2 weeks ago enrolling the final state-funded higher ed institution. We've got Weber State on board. We had a meeting with UTEC last week. All 8 UTEC schools are enrolling, which means that your K-12 students, once they graduate, this tool doesn't just disappear for them. They're still able to use it as they're continuing on with their education. It's actually pretty neat. We looked 2 weeks ago. Currently, we're in every high school in the state of Utah minus 1 in Washington County, and 2 middle schools, and about 100 or so elementary schools as they're starting to enroll. And of course, off to such a good start, too. There we go. All right. So just to kind of give you a brief overview of who we serve, there are a lot of hands in the pot. So UTEC just came on board last week, like I said, USHE, Utah System of Higher Education, private schools, charter schools, USBE, and then looking into 2019, we're hoping to enroll BYU, Westminster, LDS Business College, any other schools that really want to come on board. So I bring this up because a lot of the changes, we have these meetings and we love to listen to the feedback, and especially IT and the crisis line. And I just want you guys to be patient with us because it's not just USBE that we're serving. We have to then go out to this broader audience and bring it to their attention and get their input and feedback. So we welcome the feedback. Michelle and I both love when we do get emails with, problems or issues or recommendations, because we can then bring that up to the team, as well as our SafeUT commission, which involves the Attorney General's office, University of Utah Health IT Department, Department of Health, So, the legislature, a whole bunch of people. So the bureaucracy is alive and well. Just to kind of give you an idea of UNI and our role in SafeUT, we are a state-funded program. SafeUT is completely funded by the state legislature. We do use UNI as the community-based crisis and diversion services. They're a critical component to the continuum of care, provide crisis line, warm line, MCOT, and SafeUT services to 24/7 out of our crisis contact center in downtown Salt Lake City. I bring this up because when students, parents, or educators are texting in or calling in, they're talking to our crisis workers down at the crisis center. It is the same people that are answering the National Suicide Lifeline number when people call in there. They are just wonderful people. Yeah. It's a really good slide, though, so you guys are lucky. All right. A fun 2 hours. All right. So just to give you guys a view of how we're doing so far, like I spoke to a little bit, as of December 5th, we're at about 81% of districts. The majority of that is elementary schools. We are starting to see elementary schools come on board. We've left it up to the district to decide individually whether or not they want to enroll elementary. We recommend it, if not for their students, then for the educators and parents. We actually see quite a bit of usage from the 5th and 6th grade population, as well as parents just texting in, calling in, asking, my student is doing this, my son is doing this, how do I handle it, what resources are available for me in my area. And our crisis workers have a huge list of referrals in the database that they're able to pull by insurance, location, age group, and then they can get those out to the parents if they're ever interested in getting some help for their kids. Or
can I interject? Sure. For those of you districts who don't have elementary schools, we see tips as young as 2nd grade with weapons at school, weapons on the bus. So if you don't have your elementary schools and you think like, oh, the kids don't deal with this stuff, they do. So just to keep in mind, we have our cards. We're happy to enroll any of the schools, but we are seeing it younger and younger. So just saying.
Charter, we're now, almost 80% across the state. Private, we're at 18%. That was 9% about a month ago, 2 months ago. So as private is coming on board, we're seeing a lot more usage as well. University, 77%. With UTEC coming on board, that number's going to jump up quite drastically. So total, we're in about 80% of the schools across the state. K through higher ed, public, private, and charter. App installs, 35,000 Android, about 61,000 Apple. totaling 95,972. As you can see, the download rate's only about 13.5% for our student population. I came on in July, and when I saw that number, I was kind of flabbergasted. After being in this position for a number of months now, going out to events, going out to community events, speaking with the kids, everyone knows who we are. The schools, the school districts are doing an absolutely wonderful job letting the students know that this resource is here. And every time I talk to a student, they say, "Oh yeah, we get assemblies about this. It's never in my school, and they tell me to download it, and then I run out of memory and I delete it." But they know it's there, which is the important thing. So if they're in crisis or if they have a friend in crisis, they know that all they have to do is just re-download it or download it from the first place and use it right there. Not good with technology. Working for an app. Just to show you the K through 12 utilization. So July 1st, 2017, July 10th, 2017, when we really launched the app to Sunday, we've seen 22,176 chats. That's including 460,588 threads, and that's a thread of a conversation. So that could be anything from, hey, I'm not doing so well. Hi, how are you? What can I do for you? And then we see a lot just paragraphs in those threads. So it's quite something. They're talking, which is great. That averages out to about 21 threads per chat. We've seen 12,474 tips, including almost 40,000 threads, averaging about 3 threads per tip. We're in 776 schools, including all higher ed, and then UTech is coming on. We should be enrolling them. Hopefully, we'll get them all enrolled by February 1st. Almost 80% of the K through 12 schools, and like I said, 77% higher ed schools. So this shows, it's a pretty startling graph, actually, the usage that we're seeing. We always see a dip in the summer. Kids aren't in school, they're with their family, they're not using it as much, which is great. But as you can see, even from last August to this August, September, huge spike. October, we saw the most chats that we've seen so far. November, we've seen almost the most tips. So the kids are using it, which is exactly what we want.
Also, October, just to compare, October is our highest month. It's also the first month in Utah that we did not have a youth suicide. So I don't know if that's causation, but it's pretty awesome.
So. Yeah. You can see the spike last year in February, March. That was after Parkland. We saw a huge increase. KSL ran week-long ads during the Olympics without letting us know. So we saw a huge spike in usage there. But because the schools and the school districts are doing an absolutely fantastic job about letting their students know, students are getting more comfortable, they're starting to trust the app more, and usage is just increasing. There we go. So these are the top 5 tip topics for K-12 across the state of Utah. Suicide is number 1. 2,082 tips coming in. Bullying is right behind it. And what we actually find is, depending on when we pull these tip topics, they tend to kind of overlap and jump each other, leapfrog each other. Depression's number 3, drugs, and then cutting.
And that's the same across all age groups. From elementary through higher ed, those have been our 5 top tip topics.
So, how does it work? I will go through this briefly because I'm sure most of you know how SafeUT works, or you guys have seen these slides a million times. The features that users can use, they can submit tips. Those are concerns that could be anything from weapons, assault, bullying, harassment, sexual assault, planned school attack, act of kindness we've added on there. They could chat or text, which is the therapeutic dialogue with the SafeUT licensed crisis worker, or they can call. And when they hit that call button, it pulls up the National Suicide Lifeline, which will get them directly to a crisis worker. The thing that separates SafeUT from really any other app in the nation is the ability for a student, parent, or educator to reach a master's level clinician 24/7, 365. There are other apps out there. There is the National Crisis Text Line, which is, I believe, 741-741. Those are run by volunteers. They have to get between 8 and 30 hours of volunteer training. And then when someone texts in, they're reaching someone nationwide. It's not someone local. It could be someone just on their lunch break that logs in and is texting for 30 minutes and then they have to leave. There's the Trevor Project, which is an absolutely fantastic program. It's geared towards LGBTQ youth. Again, it's run by volunteers and they have business hours. So if someone is trying to text in with them or call in with them after, I want to say, 9 p.m. Pacific time, no one is there to answer. So SafeUT was created, and the bill was created originally because there was a young woman down south, 16 years old, who was actively suicidal. She reached out and called a crisis line, and unfortunately the crisis line was closed and she took her own life. So our legislators that we work with, Senator Dan Thatcher and Representative Steve Ellison, realized the enormity of this issue and put into place SafeUT. And 3 years later, here we are. So like I said, you can submit a tip. This is what it looks like. Once you click that, event categories pop up, a whole long list. They can put in as much or as little information as they want. We have found that students who are submitting tips, especially about their friends or someone that they know, seem to put in quite a bit of information. They want that person to get help. Once they add, the information in there, the tip summary pops up, they hit submit. How it works is that immediately gets sent to our crisis workers. They triage the tips. If it's, and I'll speak to this a little bit more later on in the presentation, if it's an immediate concern, they handle it, and it's after school hours, they handle everything on their end, while simultaneously letting the school know about the tip and about the situation. If it's during school hours, they immediately pass that on to the contacts that we have, in the school administration. Chat, view existing. So when someone chats in, texts in, pops up just like a regular text conversation on their phone. Thank you for reaching out through SafeUT. We'll be right with you. That's our automatic message that immediately gets sent back to them. Our response times are pretty fantastic. I do a presentation for adolescent inpatient unit up at uni. And I asked, and a lot of times when I ask, how do you use SafeUT, a lot of people there have. And I like to say, what was your experience? How long did you have to wait? And the longest that I've heard is 30 seconds. That's, our goal is to be immediate. That's not saying that, if a lot of influx is coming in, it might be a little bit longer, but I mean, Barry, do we have under 2 minutes? Is kind of what our goal is?
Always.
So, start a call, like I said, they hit that, they bubble pops up. That's the National Suicide Lifeline. Hit call, go right through. So, we've heard a lot of feedback from schools and districts about what the school's role is compared with SafeUT's role, especially for after-hours tips that come in. During school hours, SafeUT, the crisis workers, will screen all tips before sending them onto the school. We put in place a protocol where every tip that comes in should have a disposition note attached to it. That could be anything from, there's not enough information here, tried to reach out to the student, never heard back, passed on to the school, anything like that. Schools should follow up on all tips sent in a timely manner. And then we really would love if the school user who's responding to the tip writes a disposition note as well with either the outcome of the tip after they spoke with the student or what they did on their end, who they reached out to. That way, if our crisis workers have to pull it up in the future or we're looking back on it, we know exactly what happened as well. Just that communication between both the school and SafeUT is huge.
Is that something that we would submit to you or just keep on our own files, or what would be, is there a form there that I've missed, I guess?
So I'll show you a little bit when I'm going through the dashboard, but in the tips, there's, at the bottom there it says disposition notes. You can put it right in there and hit submit, and that actually attaches to the tip. So both the crisis worker and you guys could always see it. So this is our after hours procedure. Barry, did you want to speak to this at all? Or?
Sure, I can.
Yeah.
So this has been coming up quite a bit. I'm sure there's probably some questions about it. Our role is really, we are the crisis workers. We're experts in risk management and risk assessment, and we want to do that for you. We want to be able to provide that risk management and risk assessment, particularly after hours and on weekends when you're not available. I think that's one of our big values to you all, is we're always going to be there for your students. And after hours, I know there's been some confusion. And when we designed the program, the way we designed it with input from all the schools at that time was that we would, if a tip comes in after hours that has any risk attached to it, if they're talking about feeling suicidal or a threat of some sort or any kind of dangerousness, it's our role to respond back to that student and to try and get more information and do a risk assessment as best we can via texting. It's a very unique skill set. Our staff are getting very good at doing it. Responding back to the tipster and asking for more information about the situation. Typically it's a third party, maybe a student worried about something that they saw on social media or what they heard say. And so we'll ask them kind of what the friend said, when they said it, have they said it before, kind of basic questions that we know how to ask. We aren't going to ask them for their judgment about the seriousness, but we're going to ask them very basic questions just about the here and now behavior without being subjective. We don't want to give them any stress and asking them to make decisions about the safety. Other type of questions we need to ask to find out kind of the information we need. And if it's something that we feel like requires a face-to-face evaluation, then we'll ask them for location information, and hopefully they can provide that. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. A lot of friends as a whole different kind of thing. Used to be a friend, you always knew where they were. Now a friend can be somebody that they just know on social media and they never even met. They may not know even where they live. So we do our best to try to ask them questions and try and get location information. on a tip, we typically are going to get the correct school, and so we do know that, but we may not know much else, and that's when we may involve you. We can't find location information, and we feel like we need to give a evaluation to a student. That's when we would start looking at our accounts and start going down the list and looking for some typical. And we're going to talk more about that. We're looking at creating a development team, creating a kind of a primary, secondary emergency contact in all your accounts, so that we know who to call, and then you would actually be able to control that, and you'd be able to change those if somebody needed a break, or you could rotate that so nobody had primary all the time. If you're in a high volume area, we'll say, but the goal. So if we're calling you after hours or on the weekends or something, that's what it would be for. Was for you to be able to access your database if we knew a name of a student or we knew and locate them. And so we might call you to see if you could, and then have a discussion, let you know what's going on, and then we will offer to call the parents or call police or do whatever we need to do just to protect the student and make sure they're safe. And sometimes the principals or whoever we were talking to want to call the parents themselves, and that's okay too. We want to collaborate with you and do this together. Just as long as we are guaranteed that, and then we'll need a call back or something to make sure we're guaranteed that the student is been evaluated and is safe. If we can locate a student, then we will do all that ourselves. And so we will contact the parents, we'll contact law enforcement, we'll do what we need to do. And if we do that, the expectation of our staff is that we will document all that in the disposition section of the tip before we send it, and that you will have a detailed description. And the process right now that we all agreed to in the beginning, because the majority of schools at that point wanted to know if there was a high-risk situation, they wanted to know in real time what had happened. And so we go ahead and send those tips. And I know, and that's kind of the controversial part right now, because sometimes if we totally handled it, there's some discussion about, should we be waking people up at 3 a.m. And we certainly don't want to put any extra stress on people and create unnecessary difficulty for you. That's a concern of ours. It's not something that we take lightly, but that's the procedure that we have in place right now. Is we'll handle those tips. If we can handle them successfully, we're comfortable. We'll put all the information in our disposition. We'll put a plan in there. If might recommend that the school counselor see them the next school morning. What we did and what the plan was, and then we go ahead and send them. For non-risky tips, we batch those. And I think most of you know the batching process. If you're new to this, we have what we call a batch process, where anything that's not a risk-related tip, we put into a holding folder that automatically gets sent out at 7 o'clock the next morning. Won't be woken up about those things, but you, if there's a risk-related tip, you will be getting that whenever it's handled, or whenever we get those. We're not holding those. Questions about that? I know there's some people that are asking us to kind of reevaluate that process. And so we're with Christy and looking at if we need to do a survey or some way of kind of getting information from you and change. If we wanted to change that process, it wouldn't be our decision to change that. We can do that. It would be a decision that you would all need to be part of, as well as higher education and all the other schools. part of the program right now. So we're hearing both sides. There's a lot of people that really value getting that in real time, so they don't walk in that next morning and not having that information with them. Rather just get it when they you'll be hearing more about that. Try and figure out a way to really make a decision that works for everyone. And there may be something. There have been some different ideas thrown around that we're talking about too. We may be able to find something helping with that, because we really are very concerned about, particularly in the high volume areas. We know that some of the districts are receiving a large amount of tips, and it is a concern that people are feeling burned out, stressed out. Because we're really promoting the use of it like this. So we really are encouraging our students to use it. And the more they do use it, then the more it puts more work on all of us. And you as it gets more and more successful, it creates more and more of that work for all of us. But it's really important what we're doing. Cool. The detail, the sensitive nature of these conversations we're having, you're only seeing about 1/3 of those, because you're seeing the tips. The live chats are really 2/3 of these interactions we're having with your students, and it's really remarkable. And we often don't know who they are, and don't need to. They're talking with us and getting the support they need, or getting direction, and all talk with their parents, talk with school counselors, talk with you all. The kind of support that they need. Those things, I think, it's a tool that is unique, I think, to Utah right now, and it's something that we're seeing. We're very proud of it, and we hope you are as well, because you're one of them.
Mary, I would love for you to speak a little bit to, do you get a fair amount of repeat users? That's what I'm thinking, kind of the, frequent flyers.
We do.
What tends to, how does follow-up tend to be different if it's, say, somebody who's called, and it's their 5th or 6th time? Does it tend to change the follow-up, or?
We haven't formalized a follow-up process right now. Anytime we feel like a student needs a follow-up, we can flag that and follow up with them the next day or two with a phone call. We're talking about that, and I think as we grow, and this is still really a very new program if you think about it. Really, with our new app that our amazing programmers developed over the last year and a half, we have so many more opportunities to do new things with it. And we have a big list. Probably won't talk about their list today, but they have a big list of a big wish list from us of things to add to it. And there's a lot of opportunity to add things like more follow-up, maybe via texting, just a text back follow-up. Right now we do a lot of phone follow-ups. In fact, that's a huge part of our crisis service is following up. But anytime we see something that really is kind of an acute situation that we feel like would be helpful, we will do that. And talk about maybe really formalizing a process like that. But one of the great things about the app that wasn't and I don't know if other apps do this or not, but it actually, as long as they're using the same phone, it keeps a history, so it automatically has a history. So if I receive a chat, I can look in the history tab, and there's a whole, if they've chatted with us before or put in tips before, then we'll see all those. And that's really helpful for a crisis worker to be able to know that and just look back and see what the themes were, what this person is struggling with. And we'll reinforce a plan if we give them some ideas. It gives us a lot more opportunity to help. And so we do track that, and we are able to see that for the repeat texters. And questions? Yes.
We have an issue just with one student where there's been multiple tips saying like that she brought drugs to school or that she brought a gun to school or that she's suicidal, and it seems more like they're targeting her, but it's from different phone numbers, so it's probably a group of friends targeting her. Is there any way to deal with that you guys have come up with? Most of the time it's not like this, don't get me wrong, but
If that, it has happened that, our students are very bright, right? And then it didn't take them long to learn how they could actually bully somebody using an app like this. And it's happened a few times. It hasn't happened a lot. I mean, percentage-wise, it's infinitesimal, but it has happened, and for that student, it was really a really terrific situation. And yes, we can intervene. And so what we can do, if we can figure out, if we can identify that there's a really bullying situation going on, the process we have in place right now, and it's right in the terms of use, when a student enrolls in the app, downloads the app, we can involve law enforcement if we need to. Kind of what we have in place right now is if there's a pattern of bullying going on using the app, involve law enforcement. If law enforcement they'll accept charges and get a subpoena, then we can provide the IP addresses, we can provide the information from the phones, and then with the subpoena they can go, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but they can go to Apple or Android and they can track down exactly the location of the student, go and investigate. And that's happened successfully 3 or 4 times now. And whether they prosecute or not, it's a law enforcement decision. But that is definitely there. And we don't advertise this, but most of you know there's geolocation in the app as well. And it's quite sophisticated. And so if a student has a location turned on their phone, we can pinpoint exactly where that's coming from. Try not to use that. It's a very, very last resort. I really don't want students to feel like we really know that or that we would use that. Confidentiality piece of this is another thing that highly in. And so we don't need the last resort. But we have used that a couple of times too when we felt like it was a life-threatening or a school threat type situation. And so that is available to us if we need to.
Is that on chats and tips or just on chats?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, it's a very last resort. We're going to try everything we can to get location information. We don't want that to get spread around. Yes.
So I received a tip probably at 11 o'clock at night, looking for, obviously we have access to our students' personal information and their address and their parents' phone numbers. So you go to us first before you do the tracking locator, is that correct? I was just wondering.
I mean, unless if it really was an emergency, then we're going to go right to emergency personnel. We'll do whatever we can. So it gets a little bit tricky in how we coordinate sometimes. I know sometimes we've gotten, I think staff, school personnel have gotten confused because sometimes they've gotten a tip before a phone call, other times they've gotten a phone call before a tip, and because sometimes it's kind of tricky how the coordination works depending on how acute the situation is, and sometimes we feel like we need to move on it and then involve you. Other times we want to kind of send it maybe along at the same time they're trying to reach you by phone, and it gets a little tricky because not everyone's going to get a phone call. So then you have the other people that were alerted maybe not kind of knowing what's going on. And that's another thing that we're talking about is, and John, that's part of our wish list. I know they've been working on right now is that ability for whoever takes the tip to alert the other people that you've got it, that you're handling it. And I think that will help with that as well. They'll be talking more about showing you the dashboard and kind of showing talking about
a lot of the tips that we're getting involve information that I'm receiving this through Snap, I'm receiving it through social media. Are we asking what those handles are so that we can follow up?
We should be, if we can. We have on some. If we're missing some, that's a good discussion to have with our staff.
Just, I know in the Davis School District we're pursuing that avenue. So that would be invaluable information if we could get those handles and follow up and see what might actually be said or talked about or. That's good.
I have a comment to that. I think it's awesome because that SafeUT, they can submit photos, and I'll just text back the student and say, can you please send me a screenshot or proof? That way, when I give parents a call and say, hey, this is what has been, it's been through SafeUT, an anonymous tip, and your student is doing this on Snapchat, and then it shows you the proof. So there's a message board at the bottom where you could be asking the student, can you please send me a screenshot of this so that we have proof? And sometimes
it's very effective. And you can always go back and ask the tips as well. And as you ask for, if we miss something, you can go back in and ask them, and hopefully they'll respond. Questions? All right. If you have more for me, I'll be here at the end. But I want to turn it over to for our IT folks. I think that's just up next. But thank you all.
So just a quick recap. Basically, the biggest takeaway from this that I would say is if it's after 3 p.m. and it's an emergent risk, an immediate risk, SafeUT will handle it. If we need the contacts, the tipsters or the person of interest, contact information, address, parent's name, whatever, we will be calling a contact to get that. We had a discussion, we had a meeting here last week where a question was brought up. Are the users allowed to give the crisis workers the parents' contact information? Yes. Christy, can you speak to that anymore? As far as, because I know they were concerned about like FERPA and everything like that. But.
Right. So with FERPA, anytime a student's at risk of harming themselves or others, we have the right to work with emergency responders and crisis workers to intervene. And so SafeUT is covered under that.
And being trained professionals, and we're covered under HIPAA and FERPA as well, I believe. So that question was brought up. Yes, completely fine to give out that information to the crisis worker. If it's not an immediate risk, we'll batch it until 7 a.m. the next morning. We've heard feedback that people don't want it on the weekends. If they can hold it off until Monday. Again, it's a larger discussion that we have to have with all these different entities that we're now involved with. And crisis workers are going to write detailed disposition notes. So any contact in the school that is looking at that tip knows exactly what the SafeUT worker did, what was handled, and what needs to be handled on the school's end. Like I said, with the during school hours, if the school Gloria?
So we are getting in Jordan on Saturday and Sunday morning the 7 o'clock tips.
Yeah, so that's across the board at 7 days a week at 7 a.m. What I was saying is we've heard from some districts that they'd obviously like it if we could hold those weekend tips until Monday, because compassion fatigue is a real thing. And if they're getting them on the weekend, it's in their head and they're thinking about it and they're not able to relax. So, yeah.
I can comment too. That's actually a new feature we're working on that's based on feedback from everybody. So we're working on a school scheduler where you can black out, arrange or black out a weekend or all weekends for non-emergency batch tips.
Did everyone hear that? So if schools could write a follow-up disposition note as well, basically the best practices is SafeUT, crisis workers, as well as school contacts. Disposition notes are our new best friends. I mean, as much communication as we can have on all tips, the better. All right, IT updates. Want to jump up here?
This is John DeGray, everyone, creator of the app.
So my name is John DeGray. I am the software development manager. And I'd like to briefly introduce my team. This is Christian Jones, a software developer we'll be hearing from shortly. Quinn Heap in the back there, also a software developer, and Kristen Johnson as the project manager. So I'll take a minute to talk about some of the new updates that we're working on. One being the attachments. This is a feature that's actually already done and ready to go live. We're waiting for procedures and stuff to get in place, mainly because of just for that what if inappropriate material gets sent through the attachments. So we're developing process procedures for that. As soon as that's in place, then we'll be able to turn the attachments on. What you'll see in the app, so the app has, right next to the chat window, there'll be a very small camera icon. And you just tap on that, and it gives you the option to pick from your photo list or take a picture live. And pretty much the same process as iMessage or Android. So that's new, and as I mentioned just earlier about the school scheduler, there's kind of the vision with this is being able to block out weekends for all non-emergency tips, being able to black out a date range like spring break, winter break, summer break, and trying to make this kind of intuitive as possible. The vision is that you could actually set it individually granular per school, or you could set it up, set it up for one school and then apply it to the whole district. Kind of the vision on that for now. I think Barry mentioned the I Got This button. That's actually probably the next feature that will be released. And what that is, again, is let's say 10 people are on the list for the tip, and one person out of that 10 is currently working on the tip. That person can just click on, we're calling it I Got This. I don't know, maybe we'll just keep calling it I Got This. But they'll press that button and it'll send out a notification to the other 9 saying I'm currently working on this. We just recently did a fairly large release about a month or so ago. And a lot of that, we actually wanted to release it before this meeting so that we could get it out there, have you guys use it, and potentially provide us feedback for it. So Kristen's going to be showing the demo and training on the new feature. We do love the feedback. We're your partners. We want to hear from you. How do we make this easier and better for you? So with that, we got a lot of UI improvements coming out, and that's mainly from just feedback from you guys. Bug fixes. I think someone also mentioned about the primary and secondary phone numbers. So just being able to distinguish who they should call first, especially at 3 a.m. And that's kind of the list right now on what we're currently working on. And I guess if there's any questions.
So when, as a school counselor, I get a message from them, and I write to the kid back in the chat and say, "Hey, this is Miss Watts. Can you come see me about this, or can you give me more information?" Almost never does a kid respond. So I guess my question is, do they get a notification that we have responded to them, like on Facebook Messenger that says the little check mark, or is that?
They do. There is one. I don't know if you call it a bug, but one thing that was not currently in the web portal is it doesn't refresh automatically. So even if they did respond, unless you were manually refreshing it, you wouldn't know. And that's actually something that it's been fixed, and I believe that.
I'm not sure if the fix has been pushed, but it's.
So, yeah, we're addressing the refresh issue, whether that is or not. But yes, they do receive a notification.
Like the little bubble on Facebook when you have a notification that says like one.
Yeah,
they get that.
It does a little pop up as long as they allow notifications. If they block it, they won't. But it will show. I believe even if you block it, I think it shows a little icon on a little dot on the icon to indicate a new message is there. I'll follow up, find out on the docket if that's what
Show if it's been read or not?
I'm sorry?
Does it show if it's been read?
Yeah, once they go in and you currently no, we don't have a way to show that they read the message. But it might not be a bad idea to put in. I'll let Christian take it over as far as.
Great. Search on the dashboard. Obviously,
Can I ask another question? Sorry.
I just had a. Okay. No, I'll wait. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. So as counselors, I just wondered, because I know that my kids are texting in about I broke up with my boyfriend today or whatever, but we don't receive notifications of any of that stuff. It's only if it's an at risk for the school, a safety issue, or for the student, correct?
That's correct. Only for tips. The chat pieces are it's only engagement with the counselor.
Gotcha.
Okay, my question was, I in a middle school, and I believe a lot of mine are coming through computer, not through texting. What if I type them back? What kind of notification are they going to get through their computer? Through the web?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
If they're sending it through the web, then no, there's no chat. If we're allowing chat, we need to check it, make sure. There's no chat piece on the.
Okay, so no way to contact that person back if it's coming through the web.
If they currently know.
Yeah, they can't. The web portal they can only submit a tip through. That's a great question that you had as well. I've heard that from multiple people about, when I text back, are they able to actually see that text, or are they getting notified without having to jump back into the app and view existing chat?
Well,
yeah.
Can you be sure you talk real loud? We're working on getting a mic, but the sound kind of swallows up as it comes towards the back.
Yeah.
So just use your outside voice.
My inside voice too is loud.
Oh,
so that's
cool. Perfect. Me too.
Sorry, Michelle.
All right, I have lots of questions. That's why I came to the training.
Good.
So, as a counselor, I'm just having a hard time because I download, like when I'm at home and I'm trying to check this, it's like I have to go through the direct link through my email. Like I'll get a text message that says there's a SafeUT tip, and then I have to log into my work email, and then I have to go and click on it and go to the direct link of the SafeUT.med or whatever. Do you guys have something for counselors and administrators that, because I have the tip on my, it wouldn't let me do it like an administrator when I downloaded the app. Does that make sense? Like I'm having a hard time. I always have to go through my email for that direct link, and then I have to sign in through the web. Is there a way that we could just have it on our phones?
Yeah, we've actually talked about that, and it's just kind of a matter of priorities on whatever it is to kind of decide on priorities. But
Gotcha.
I think it's a great idea. Yeah, you know, we can put it in our backlog and vet it out and see, do we want that as a separate app? Do we want it built into the one? Yeah, I mean, I can see what you're saying though. It's
Have you tried logging into the website on your phone browser?
Yeah, I was just saying, like, I need to save it obviously on my web browser, on my Chrome or whatever, but it's just, I always have to go through the email way, and I'd love it if it was just there and I could go, oh, look, I got a tip, a notification, boom, and look at it and be like, oh yeah. You know what I mean?
Save a web page as an
icon on the app. Oh, yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, so that would be, at least for now, a way to do it.
Good way. That's a good.
And then when you log in, so this is the site, and then to go to the portal, you just put /portal. And I know some of you know a lot of this, and I know there's users, so I'm going to go through all of it. But at least when you come in that way through the website on your phone, you would come to the tip screen. So you wouldn't be directly to that specific tip, but then you can find it here. And I just have a test school, so I don't have a lot of tips. You're fitting in. Also, there are certain users, a school admin or a district admin. And the district admin would see all the schools that they are associated with, instead of just the ones from your specific school. You can also see closed tips here. And then when you click on a tip, you can assign it here. And right up here, we're also going to have the I got this feature, which will automatically assign it to you. And that will also notify anyone else that gets notifications for this tip. They'll get notified your names when you're currently working on it, so they don't have to also go in and then this is the area that should be pre-filled out. So this is the area that will be filled out when the tip's submitted, and this position area is the main area where you'll be working, updating the information that you get, and then down below is the chat. This is the chat, making sure everything works as expected, and then down here is where you will see attachment, the ability to, well, actually, I don't have that turned on, so I can't really show the attachments, but you will be able to see any attachments, any images that are sent through the app will show up here in the chat as well. And you'll be able to click on them and view them as a larger picture. One thing that's been requested, it's been added in on the test, is the ability to change the status here rather than going all the way back up, because this information can be pretty big and you can be pretty far down on the page. So this same change status will be located down there in the disposition area as well. This is where it's can be assigned, closed, or if for some reason a tip comes to you that you realize isn't for your school, you can send it back, and that will get reassigned.
Can I speak to that? Do you all know that so if a tip is assigned to your school, but it is actually for a separate school, this is actually a way that you can send it back to the crisis workers and actually leave a note saying, hey, this was sent to Skyline, but really it's for Jordan. And that will go back to the crisis workers so that they can reassign it to the correct school. So I've heard from some contacts, that have called me kind of concerned about that. So this is the actual way in the tip, in the portal, that you can do it and get it right back to the crisis worker if it's misassigned.
Please add a note because a lot of times we don't know why it's coming back to us. So.
Yeah, the notes very helpful.
Yeah.
So that's the main portion of this area. If you guys have questions, feel free to bring them up. For school admins, we now have the ability, school admins and district admins, the ability to manage users for any schools that you're administrating. You'll see all of the users here in this list. You can also, this is where you can add users. And you can filter by school or do specific search. And one thing that has been added recently is the ability to, before you could only be associated with one school. So this was a big request. Now you can be associated to multiple schools. Now that on here, as well as this other information, turning on notifications for email and text. And that's the bulk of this area. Pretty simple, but powerful area where you can manage the users. Also, so I think that's pretty much everything. So, have any questions? Yes, I can answer questions. Also, as has been mentioned several times, we love feedback. We're building this portal for you guys to make it easier and comfortable to use. And so anything that you guys have, feel free to reach out and we're happy to take a look at. Okay, so we have, since the permissions are new for the user management, sometimes you'll come in here and you may not be able to access it. If that's the case, reach out to Will or Michelle, and they just need to add the permissions to your user, and you'll be able to access that.
How do we reach out to Will or Michelle?
Our cards are on the table.
Okay.
Yeah, and that we apologize that we tried to streamline that, but it's it's hard to communicate to everyone, and so hopefully we can get everyone accessing that needs to as possible.
It's just through the. So as far as managed users go, it's the only people that would have this feature are district admin leaders. So student services directors for the district, superintendents. We've talked about if principals would like access to it. So at the beginning of the school year, Michelle and I had a great project where we got spreadsheet after spreadsheet from all the districts with all the teachers who've moved around in the districts or left and retired or new. So this is a way to kind of keep control and know who your users are. But for now, it will be kind of that district level. We'll be the only ones that will have access to that. Yeah.
Sorry, I have a lot of questions.
Shoot.
Can our district crisis worker who rotates from school to school, can she be added to multiple schools, or once you're added to a school, you're done?
She can be added to every school.
Okay.
Yeah, and we actually have that a lot. So.
But your district leader can do that, or you can contact us and we can do that.
Carolyn and Michelle and Joel.
And yeah,
But it should be.
When we pull up the school tips, what is the envelope icon that's next to the number. I don't notice the difference.
So, yeah, so on that second tip, so the top one didn't have an envelope, and the bottom one did have an envelope. There you go.
I can see it.
They don't go away until but even if they're closed, you open it.
And then the envelope still stays.
I think it was supposed to indicate
It's not working.
We'll have it to work. That's good. I've wondered that same thing actually. So that's good. I was not aware that we'd have Christian do a great presentation, so I did this. So we'll go quickly through it too. Guys have any questions as I go?
Question.
Yeah.
Do you guys have people who speak Spanish or other languages?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have Spanish speakers on the crisis line.
So SafeUT, the app actually does support Spanish. It's automatically changes to Spanish based on the settings of the phone.
Okay.
And so if the phone, for iPhone, for example, you go into settings and change the preferred language to Spanish. The SafeUT app will automatically convert. It's based off of the phone settings.
In fact, a question for all of you is we're now looking at adding more languages. If you have recommendations for languages besides Spanish, we would like to know those. And it's a process for that to happen, but we do have the ability to add more languages now. So if you have any ideas about that, let us know.
Yes, how about American Sign Language, ASL? I mean, we need to have a counselor who is skilled with American Sign Language. You know, our students sometimes don't even have a very good ability to read English. So some do, some can text, but some of our students only use sign language. So that would be awesome if you could add some sort of feature like that.
We are currently working with the School for Deaf and Blind. It's kind of a bit of a process since it is a texting app, but we're trying to figure out how to.
Sorry, that's us. With who?
Who are you working with?
With USTP.
I have multiple emails. I can pull them up.
Okay, awesome.
Way to call her out. Keep her on her toes. That's what I do too.
Let me just, while we're doing that, I just want to say that this is what's unique about this app, is that our developers are here full-time working on these things to engage and add functionality for you as a user, for the school to be able to actually manage a lot of your own functionality in this app is, I think, unique to this program. There are other tip apps around the country. They're usually managed by law enforcement. Like this and, triage tips out to schools. And this ability for us to give you and your administrators the ability to manage dashboards and accounts and have you integrated into this process is unique and obviously very complex, but just it's amazing.
So I have a question. Perhaps I wasn't doing this correctly, but on the dashboard when I have an administrator that just leaves, all I've been able to do is go in and inactivate rather than delete. Is there a delete process? No, it's still the same, so I am doing it right. Oh, hallelujah. Okay.
Delete is a dirty word, right? We don't delete anything. Ever.
Okay.
Well, we security we took security very seriously, and security was our very at our forefront while developing it. Technically speaking, texters are not patient, so therefore it's not really HIPAA compliant, but we treat it that way anyway. And so part of the process of like, one of the HIPAA requirements is auditing. And so that's why you don't allow the delete because it makes the integrity of the data. If we have to do an audit or go back to, for whatever reason, if there's litigation or whatever, have that preserved.
So I just wanted to stop on this slide real quick. Until we get the primary and secondary feature live and on the dashboard, we're asking the districts to send us the primary and secondary contacts for each school. So how the protocol is put in place is our crisis workers will reach out first to principals, SROs, vice principals, counselors, and down. Unfortunately, I've gotten some emails from my contacts that the wrong person was contacted at this school, and so they just don't have any way on their end to see. So now that this is live, we will be making sure that all the district leaders have the ability to do this. Feel free to steal one of Michelle and I's car, and you can shoot us an email with your school primary and secondary list. That'd be great. But just wanted to harp on that.
Just so everyone is aware, here are the districts as well as like locations that we're going to cover. So I cover Box Elder, Cache, Canyons, Carbon, Daggett, I'm getting a phone call, Davis, Duchesne, Granite, Jordan, Logan City, I'm getting another phone call. Jordan, Logan City, Morgan, North Summit, Ogden, Park City, Rich, South Summit, Tooele, Uinta, Wasatch, Weber. Will covers Alpine, Beaver, Emory, Garfield, Grand, Iron, Juab, Maine, Millard, Murray, Nebo, North Sanpete, Paiute, Provo, Salt Lake, San Juan, Sevier, South Sanpete, Tintic, Washington, and Wayne. I'm not from Utah. It's been very difficult to learn how you pronounce things.
It's pronounced Guam.
I did thought it was Quab and Sevier, so I apologize.
Utah's a strange beast. Yeah. So if you guys have any, yes.
Yeah. She may have actually just answered that by default, but when you're referring to district admins, are you referring to LEA admins? Yes. So each charter school then is an LEA, and therefore it's assigned an admin specific to that LEA, which would be either their school or satellite schools. Okay, so who is the contact for those? Because there are 135 of those theoretically.
So we actually
each individual, except for the groups. So like American Prep, who has like 8 campuses, they actually assigned people who would cover all 8, and then individuals on the school level.
I know when we were signing up on the app, there was clearly several places for additional people other than the primary contact. So, okay, so the primary contact is then in fact the admin / principal or whoever designates.
Same with private schools. Like the Catholic diocese are on it. If private schools are part of a group, they can also have district admin on that as well. So we have actually for the Catholic diocese, I believe we have district privileges, and then the individual either principals or directors or.
Which one? We'll go, yeah.
That's my question. You are my entire area, because I'm with USDB. That's my thing. Like all my students, all of this will go to their district people, but then they're also mine. Does that make sense? Like these students they're being served within the district, but then they're also served by me too, by USDB. And I am their school psych and counselor. So it's like.
So what we could do, because
that's my thing. I'm like, it's going to them, but I'm not going to ever hear a thing.
Yeah. So what we could do is basically add you to, and I hate to say this, but every school.
I know. That's why I'm like,
that your students. And what we can
I shouldn't even ask.
What we can do is you don't have to receive text or email notifications, so your phone doesn't have to just be blowing up all the time. What that would mean is if a tip did come in, you wouldn't know right away. However, if you logged in, you'd be able to see all open tips related to your students.
Because my kiddos are dual enrolled.
So, and what we would do there is actually by title, we would just put your title plus counselor for the deaf and the blind next to it. So they know if a tip comes in relating to one of your students to contact you as well.
Okay.
Both of those schools, I believe the Ogden campus and the other one.
They're not me. That's these two. I'm his area.
Both of them are on the app. They're inactive right now. But I was told not to go live yet. And I have those emails, so I can talk to you afterwards happily. But yeah.
But there's a way to once a tip comes in, you assign it to someone in the app, right? So if they see it's one of her students, they could push that out to her so she gets it.
So you can assign it directly to them. Yep.
When you assign
I have
it,
a comment here about USDB.
Okay.
So I'm with USDB as well. So if you add a USDB, could you add it to a list of schools and then they could choose where they go to school, or USDB? So if they hit USDB, would it be directly related to us? I mean, is that possible that you could do that? We could add USDB so it would come to us?
Yes.
Yes. So right now in the app, it's not live yet. The school's considered inactive, but we have USDB Ogden, USDB the other locations. So they're all separately on the app.
Yeah. So the student.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
when
great.
the student logs in, they would select USDB from that list, and then they could submit tips directly to USDB from that location.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, I promise I'm coming to you. Okay.
I was going to ask, how difficult is it if our high school is set up and we want to get our middle school set up? How difficult is that to do?
Incredibly easy. Basically, all you would do is you could shoot us an email. We send you out. It's a Google Doc, which is our enrollment form. You put whoever the contacts you want. You can set an enrollment date, or we could try to get it done, by end of day if we have to. But it's very simple.
if you are assigning it to somebody, do they get notified that you assigned them a tip?
That's the I got this button. That's what will happen.
So the question was, so right now, if someone assigns, so they go into the tip, so Mindy goes into a tip that's open and assigns it to a contact, does that contact then get notified that the tip was assigned to them?
Currently it does not, but that is part of the new feature.
Okay. Good question.
I actually have a question for everybody here. Quick question. So somebody's question trying to spark an idea. Would it be helpful to include the nature of the tip in the notification? Right now, in the notifications in the text or the email, we just say you have a new tip. Would it be helpful to include the nature of the tip, such as the category? I see some nodding heads. Okay.
Yes.
It's morning beforehand, open it.
Yeah, I just thought maybe that
That's a
might
great idea.
It's nice when I get a tip from you.
All right.
Well,
So next up, we have Brian Gill here, principal of Alta High, to speak to best practices for school launches.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. And all the new folks that are up here. So my name is Brian McGill. I'm the principal at Alta High School. 23 years as an educator. I was a teacher at the middle school, counselor at the middle school, administrator at the middle school, guidance counselor at the high school, now school administrator. I've been at the middle school as well as the high school level. I was also a state administrator for 5 years in the system of higher education. So kind of a broad-based perspective. The role of schools, as we've seen over the last 4, 5, 10 years, has changed pretty dramatically, right? You look at, for example, schools such as East High School that are now helping kids with the ability to be able to shower in the morning, with food, with clothing. We're all pretty much familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs here in this particular room. And we also all recognize that student achievement is a byproduct of kids having those basic needs being met. You know, food, shelter, love, mental health, physical health, all those things that we work with kids day in and day out. One of the things that we've also seen in this state, and I've been able to work with Representative Eliason and Senator Thatcher quite a bit about advocacy for council ratios in the state. As you look at a lot of the middle schools and the high schools, our council ratios are pretty extraordinary. And the national recommendation being 1 to 250, state recommendation being 1 to 350. I don't know too many middle schools and high schools that actually have that particular ratio. So I think that's something that we need to keep in mind and keep in check as well. One of the things that I've done at Alta, again, being an advocate for youth and for counseling in general, is we've actually added a 1.5 FTE to our counselors through our land trust plan. And then I've also picked up a 0.5 clinical social worker that's on site pretty much year round. So creating some additional supports. We've implemented, we're in our second year of rolling out a multi-tiered system of support, MTSS model, which takes into account different responses to intervention and different tiers for intervention. So I'll kind of discuss a little bit about how we've interwove that into the SafeUT practices. And I want to thank the group up here because as you look at this utility, it's pretty amazing if you think about it. You've got the State Board of Ed, you've got Uni, you've got public schools, charter schools, higher ed, all partnering and practicing together for the best interest of students. Because quite honestly, I'm sure all of us in this room know that there's nothing more important than providing safety and care to our students, whether it's during the school day or really outside the school day, to be honest. So we launched the SafeUT app in the spring of 2016. I got a call from Lillian and Sosie Jensen, who works here at the State Board of Education, longtime friend and colleague of mine. And she knew that I was a counselor back in the day. And so she's like, all right, well, at least Brian has a clinical background. I have a master's in clinical psych and in school psych. She thought he might be a good one to help roll this out. So I'll just kind of walk you through some of the steps that we did. Maybe it sounds like you've already rolled it out. So I'll just kind of touch on some best practices. Initially, we had a school-wide assembly. So as I thought about this, how do we roll it out? How do we express the importance of it and the priority of it? And I thought, the message really should come from me as the principal of the school. I want the kids to know the seriousness of this particular app. And so we put together like a 28-slide presentation. I have that if any of you want access to that. We've also created a condensed version. It's like 6-7 slides that we do as a refresher at the beginning of every year in our grade level meetings with all of our students. So some of the things we did in walking them through it, I had them all take out their phones, walked them through the process of actually downloading the application, either Apple or Google Drive or Android devices, depending upon what they had. Also talked with them about each of the different features, right? The crisis call, the crisis chat, submitting a tip, and kind of the differences between those, walking through some scenarios so they kind of knew, when to use each of those. I also talked to them about the seriousness of reporting in on the app and utility. I kind of, I bring up 911 and 911 calls in terms of, we use it in emergency, urgent types of situations. I also throw out to them the fact that we can track down IP addresses if it came to that and they were bullying a kid or harassing a kid or something of that nature. I think that messaging has helped because we don't get a lot of, jokes and, we'll get a couple a year at all, which is pretty minimal. So I think a lot of it has to do with how you roll it out and how you advertise and promote it. As far as ongoing and sustained marketing efforts, we have posters that are hung up throughout our school, which I'm sure many of you have. I sent a letter home to our parents that spring of 2016, and then do a follow-up letter at the beginning of each school year so that the parents understand. And it's not just on SafeUT, but it's one of the components that I address our parent community about the importance and all the safety structures that we've created at Alta provide a safe environment for students. So it's one of those components. How many of you guys have a Hope Squad, just by chance, middle schools and high schools? What a great way to be able to get these kids involved, right? I know one of the things that always comes up with Hope Squad, which are suicide prevention programs, is the weight and the burden that places on kids a lot of times to, when they're counseling or advising as part of Hope Squad. So this can be a great utility and a great pathway to help those students bridge that gap and refer kids in on the SafeUT app. So our Hope Squad, a couple of times throughout the year, they'll do some different reminders and reiterate what the app is used for and the accessibility of it. Heading into the holiday season, they just recently did a candy cane note, sent it out to all the kids, and it had all the SafeUT information. So just something that's pretty simple. I mentioned the presentation that you do at the start of every school year. It's grade level based. We have a lead crew program where our juniors and seniors mentor, advise, and guide our freshmen that are entering into the high school. And they do lessons as part of an advisory program we have in place. So our kids go to advisory 4 times a week, 30 minutes a day, primarily focused on like character education, college career readiness, kind of the metacognitive components and factors, efficacy, motivation. And so what's been really cool is our lead crew leaders and our Hope Squad leaders have actually gone into a lot of the freshman, sophomore classes and done lessons for the kids based around SafeUT. And it's pretty powerful because you got peers influencing other peers. We've also done other things like blitzes at parent-teacher conferences. Our counselors will have a table with access to information. We've done presentations as part of the parent-teacher conference nights. Of course, many of you probably have peer leadership teams. Great opportunity to get them involved and do marketing and promotion efforts with Red Ribbon Week. At our school, much like many of you, we do a digital citizenship week as well, where we educate and inform the kids about the importance that every time they create a digital imprint that pretty much anybody can access it, right? All it takes is one person to send it to another person and it's out and about. So that could be a great week to help promote it. As far as usage goes, I would just share with you a few different examples that have come in. I had a parent meeting with a young man a couple weeks back, and he was coming forward with his parents to basically, acknowledge the fact that he'd been smoking pot. And there was a group of them on campus that had been doing it during lunch, and he felt very uncomfortable throwing his friends under the bus, right, and giving that information to me. And so I told him, I said, have you heard of the SafeUT app? Well, yeah, I have. Well, you can submit a tip anonymously. I'll still get the information, and then we can follow up and investigate and do what we need to do. So as we wrapped up the meeting, less than 5 minutes from him leaving my office, a SafeUT tip comes in and provides us with the information that we were looking for. So it can be a nice utility in that setting. We've seen a lot of incidents of harassment and bullying where kids have reported stuff in class, in the hallways, at different school activity-based events. We've been able to follow up and address those. Incidents where inappropriate messages have been shared between students, sometimes involving photos and video. Those are always fun cases to deal with, right? Just as the data shared up here, the data at Alta is pretty much synonymous with what was shared up there. So suicide, bullying, depression, drugs, and cutting are the major 5, the top 5 indicators at our particular school. I'll share with you just a couple of examples where unis had to actually intervene and call. I'm the primary contact at our school, primarily because of my background, which is kind of unique as a principal, and I wouldn't expect or anticipate every principal to take on the head role and responsibility. But the bottom line is I feel comfortable doing it, and at the end of the day, if I do assign it out to somebody sits on something, something happens, guess whose shoulder is going to fall on at the end of the day? So I'm the primary contact, so I get all the phone calls. I could probably count the number of times on both hands that unis actually had to call in the last 2.5 years with urgent matters. We had one I was just sharing with a colleague of mine last Thursday night. about 9:30 in the evening, happened to get a call from one of the caseworkers at uni saying, hey, we have information that you've got an active suicidal student. We have the student's name, but the tipster has not provided any more or any additional information. How would you like us to proceed? And I said, I'm happy to pull up the student information system, get parent contact info, and make a phone call, which is exactly what I did. So I called the mom. Mom picks up the phone. She's probably wondering why the principal of the school on the cell phone is calling her at 9:30 at night, right? But at least she picked up and explained to her kind of what was going on, what her son was expressing. And she said, you know what's really interesting? He's sitting right next to me here on the couch. And she says, he's got his laptop open. And she said, I pretty much figured that he's been messaging some of his friends. And so she's like, I'm sitting down with him. I'm trying to get information from him. He's been very reserved, right, with what he's sharing. But to show you the real time and just the powerful impact that that can have. I mean, I got a text, immediately, opened the text, got a phone call right as soon as I got the text. Was able to pull up the student's information, call the mom, and within less than probably 2 minutes of time, this particular kid had an active plan. He had a means, he had access, and had sent out messages to multiple friends. So again, I look at it from the perspective of, is it an inconvenience for me at 9:30 at night, or is it saving a life? And I don't know about you guys, but I've gone through the process of suicides at my school. The first 2 years I was at Alta, we had 3. There is nothing worse as an educator to have to go through that particular situation and facing the parents and working with the family. A lot of heightened emotions with that. So I feel okay being that primary contact and taking on that responsibility, because at the end of the day, if it's saving a kid's life, I'm all for it. So protocol, we get the tips, we get the texts, the emails, the calls from unis I just made mention. I take the lead on all of them. My SRO is also on each of the messages and the texts that come across. And so if there's something that's a major threat or concern or school violence, something that needs to be followed up with, he's on every exchange and message. We've also got our district leadership that's also on it. So we have a responsive services director, our director of communications, our assistant superintendent over high school that all get access to the information. So anytime we have information come in and we close it out, if it's an urgent situation, I'm going to put a disposition note just so that the uni team knows. And every time that the uni's called, they've actually called them back, asked for the case manager that I spoke to so we can get it closed out on that end as well. Yeah, well, it's a partnership, right? Let me see what else here in my notes. So I had a team of about probably 6 or 7 individuals that are on the contact list. I'm the only contact for the phone call. I'm glad to know that you guys are adding a secondary person, helping you and help out in that regard. But basically the way that we operate at my school is if it's urgent, I take it on and take the lead, and then I notify those individuals that need to be involved from my counseling team, admin team, district. If it's a non-urgent matter, what I do is I open up the text, pull up the tip, just screenshot it. I mean, you could screenshot all the basic detailed information, the date, the subject, the report that's coming in, and also the names involved, if they provided it. And so if it's a non-urgent matter, my team knows, I'll screenshot it, send it out to my counselor and admin that are over that particular alpha, and I'll give them some guidance and direction as far as an action plan of how I would like to see them proceed. And then I also ask for follow-up as it relates to that as well. We have a student study team as part of our MTSS model. We meet every other week for about 2 hours and case manage students that are going through mental health issues, environmental issues, grief, loss, divorce, struggling in school, attendance, behavior, you name it. So what we've done as part of the best practices, we've actually instituted SafeUT and all the tips that came in as part of that meeting. And so I have an administrator that does all the back end data dashboard stuff. He's assigned to it, so I include him on all the SafeUT communications so he can actually go in and notate and close out cases as needed. But the nice thing with that is it's provided a platform every 2 weeks for what, some of these tips that come in, if they're still open. We're doing follow through, we're case managing it, and we're closing them out. So that can be a good utilization of best practices as it relates to making sure that every tip that comes in is being followed up on and that you've got an active plan to be able to provide support to that student and family. And just lastly, and I'll take some questions if you guys have them. And maybe I need to knock on wood, but since we instituted the app, spring of 2016, we have not had a suicide at our school, which is pretty powerful. We all know in this room that sometimes that's inevitable, that if a person makes that decision, and they've made that, and that's their choice, and they follow through with it, that is their decision. But ultimately, it's our job and our role to try to provide as many interventions and stopgaps and support as possible to be able to save a life. I mean, that's really the bottom line at the end of the day. So I applaud the efforts of the union, the State Board of Ed, and really the state legislature for continuing to fund and support it. It's a critical utility, and I hope that each of you, take it to heart and use it at your schools as you best see fit. So if you guys have any questions, be happy to answer. One of my former principals when I was a counselor at Oak Hills Middle in Jordan.
That's right.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good to see you.
So good to see you as well. I'd like to applaud Uni as well along with you, and applaud you because you were instrumental in getting Jordan to get on to SafeUT, and you helped me a lot. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Norma. Yeah, like I said, I have a presentation I'm happy to share with you. I know she came out and visited with me just to get all the ins and outs. And I can provide that 28, slide PowerPoint to you. I can provide the 7 slide PowerPoint to you. And then I've also got our district data report that shows all the Alta High data. So if you're interested in how that report comes out, very similar to what they showed here at the state level. It shows top 5 priority areas. It shows you all the chat calls, all the crisis calls, the chats, and then the tips that come in. I aggregate numbers.
Can you give us your email so we can ask for those
No.
slides?
Yeah, no, I can definitely do that. So it's Brian, IAN, .McGill, MCGILL, at canyonsdistrict.org. So I'm happy to help you out.
We're almost there, guys. All right. Last slides, and then if you guys have any questions, shoot. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen some success stories, but I always think it's a nice way to end. Just to run you through some. Michelle and I, part of our job as project facilitators, is to do the marketing and outreach for SafeUT. So we get the pleasure of traveling all across the state, going to community events, PTA meetings, school assemblies, faculty presentations, conferences, etc. And every single time we go out, we usually get 1 or 2 stories from someone that has used the app, or it's a parent who has used the app, or their kid has used the app, and they just want to reach out and tell us. So we put a few together. A student had used SafeUT to call the crisis line. He was actively thinking about walking into traffic. Was conversing with the crisis worker, wasn't giving any real pertinent information, location, what they were wearing, where they were. So our crisis workers are absolutely fantastic. I mean, they're basically part detective. And what's great about them is if they're all in a pretty close area at the crisis center, and if they hear another crisis worker trying to gather information, a lot of times they'll drop what they're doing if they're not, on an active call or text, and work with that person to find out as much information as possible. So this user who was on the phone, they found out what school he went to. She had went to, found out that she had a uniform for that school. They got a generic location of where she was, and were able to work with law enforcement, gave law enforcement the detailed information about the uniform, and they were able to find this person before she walked into traffic. This is a pretty powerful one, third one down. A girl had taken a cocktail of medications before she went to school. It just so happened that the school had a assembly on SafeUT that morning. She went to class after the assembly, downloaded the app, was texting in with the crisis worker, divulged what she took, where she was, the classroom, who her teacher was, and SafeUT, while they were texting, were simultaneously activating EMS to go to the school. The school administration met EMS at the door. They went to the classroom, pulled her out of the classroom, and as she's coming out, she collapsed and actually was in the ICU for 5 days. So if she wasn't aware of the app, if she hadn't been texting, and if she hadn't felt comfortable, who knows if she would still be here today. Multiple tips came in about a potential school threat. And just to speak to this a little bit, we're averaging about one potential school threat a day that SafeUT is stopping across the state of Utah. It's verifiable.
And with that average, we usually get about 3 to 5 tips that come in per unique instance.
There's an FBI figure that 82% of school attacks and school shooters broadcast what they're doing before they do it. And I'm sure that number will keep going up with the advent of social media, Snapchat, and Instagram, and everything like that. But anyway, speaking to this, multiple tips came into SafeUT about this one individual. SafeUT worked with local law enforcement. I believe they got a no-knock warrant for this house. They went in and they found 18 pipe bombs in all manner of, some were finished, some he was working on, and some he had the materials to build, as well as an arsenal of weapons. He had a date planned out, which I believe was it the next day? It was, but he had a date set for exactly when he was going to do it. But they were able to stop him. Great. And then one more that I wanted to add in here. I went to the Suicide Prevention Conference down at UVU earlier this year, and a woman who was working on her Master's of Social Work came up to the booth and wanted to express how amazed she was with the efficiency of the app. Her son had been and has been dealing with mental health issues for most of his life. She felt like they were in a really good place. She said that he was open and honest, and he was communicating with her, and he was telling her that he wasn't suicidal and he didn't have a plan or anything like that. And then he goes on Instagram and posts 3 back-to-back posts saying how he's going to end it, how he's done, and he can't do this anymore. His friends saw that. They submitted multiple tips about the posts. Uni, the crisis workers, activated local law enforcement. They were able to get the location from the friends. The police officer actually called the mom and said, "Hey, I'm at your front door. Your son's been posting this stuff on Instagram. I'd like to come in and chat with him if you wouldn't mind." She opened the door. The officer came in. She said he was absolutely fantastic. They were able to safety plan with him, got some resources using SafeUT for him and get him into treatment. She said from the initial time that he had posted the first post to the time when the police officer called her and said, "I'm at your front door," was less than 10 minutes. And I'm sure all of you know the time frame for adolescents from when they first, what is it, Barry? When they first think about suicide to when they are kind of out of that danger zone? Is that 10 minutes long for adolescents?
It's most anyone in crisis, whether a student or adult, tolerate the intensity for a long period of time if they're working with somebody that pretty quickly
Get them through that crisis period.
Yeah. So crisis workers, all the crisis intervention is all about buying time with people. So, it's more real.
All right. That's it. You guys have been great. Do you guys have any questions? Yeah.
I have one more. Like I said before, I'm in a middle school, and some of these tips that come in, like I went in and trained my middle schoolers. You know, I need to have first and last names. I need to have names, and still I'm getting he's bullying me. Who is me? Has there ever been a thought of an optional tipster? Like, what is your name? Optional, so they can input there's like nowhere for them that even prompts them for their name. And so there's so many things I cannot follow up on. Is there ever, I know it's supposed to be anonymous, and it still can be if they decide not, it can be an optional thing. I don't know. There's so much I feel like I can't follow up on.
There is a field.
There is?
Yeah, that says who's involved.
But it says who is involved, and Edgar and me. Who's me? You know, who is me?
I think a worry on our end would be the confidentiality and the trust of the students using the app is the reason why we're successful. And so just from a limited perspective, I would worry that even if they saw that, and even if it did say optional, it might turn them off to moving forward and submitting the tip. But it's definitely a thought.
So where it says who is involved, could there be a little parentheses saying, please give as much information, first and last names as you can, or something, just to prompt these sixth graders who don't have the executive functioning skills to put all the information.
Well, the world revolves around them, so I mean,
right, me. It's me. Don't you know me?
That's another thing that goes back to our crisis workers continually try to prompt them for more information. But that's definitely something we could look into.
We can add more descriptive text and stuff on the field and stuff.
Yeah.
The thing that's concerning though is like we were just talking, the kids, if they have to answer too many questions, they're gonna be like, forget it. You know what I mean? If it's not simple and to the point for these kids, it's like, so that's why I think it's important for us to just text message them and be like, hey, can you give me more information? I need last names, or I need this. And that, I feel like if we put too much stuff in there, they're gonna be like, click, okay, I'm done. I'm not gonna, I don't know. You know our kids.
And that's exactly why we made all the fields practically are optional.
Yeah.
We'd rather have them as opposed to like you're just playing out.
Totally.
I'm not feeling that.
Totally.
I see another hand up over here. Everyone good? No more questions? All right, well, like we said, feel free to grab some posters. Guys, if you ever are interested in Michelle or myself coming out, doing teacher training, going to, parent night, anything along those lines, we are more than happy. If you need more marketing materials, travel cards, shoot us an email. We've got a new marketing campaign coming out. Some neat stuff. I'm actually wearing some fancy new SafeUT socks. So if you guys need anything, that's why we're here. That's our job. So thank you very much.